Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're here for part 2 of lecture. We are going to move on from Steve Reich and talk about Philip Glass. So one of the things that makes Philip Glass different from Steve Reich is certainly how he expresses himself within the minimalist framework. And one of the things that is particular to him as an artist is that he tends to like to work with other disciplines, particularly choreography, set design, costuming, um, photography, or the moving image. He's interested in a number of those things. And as a result, seems to write a lot more for vocalists and for staged works. So we're going to listen to and take a look at two different pieces from Philip Glass's body of work. We're going to listen to Einstein on the Beach, which is fairly monumental. It was performed initially as a part of BAM's Next Wave Festival, which has been around for a number of decades now and has been an important vehicle for putting out new and contemporary work. So that was done in 1975. We're going to watch a sort of collage of excerpts and what exactly is Einstein on the Beach, in addition to watching like a significant chunk of it. And reason being is that, like I said, minimalism really does rely on gradual transformation. So some of these examples that we're going to be listening to today are a little bit on the longer side for that reason. Einstein on the Beach. Let me go ahead and toggle over to my notes so that you can kind of follow along with where we are in lecture. Okay, here we are. So Philip Glass, currently living. He has his own ensemble, and much like Steve Reich, is also kind of a performer of sorts, although he does, I think, more composition than performing. But 1975, teams up with Robert Wilson and creates Einstein on the Beach. And Einstein on the Beach is a non-narrative, non-linear opera that lasts for over 4.5 hours. So non-linear and non-narrative. Non-narrative, it doesn't tell a story, and it's non-linear. So whatever kind of vignettes that are created are certainly not told in any particular order, chronological, that is. And that's exactly what the performance is a number of vignettes, like smaller 20, 30, 40-minute segments that have a kind of theme to them. And we'll watch, 7 or so minutes of one of those vignettes. But the idea is that the perception of time is something that is radically altered on behalf of the listener. And that it usually is because we're sort of invited to listen to different elements that are ongoing because of this very ostinato-driven compositional style, where you have a lot of repeating musical ideas. So Einstein on the Beach, it's a 4.5-hour opera that doesn't tell a story in any particular order, and it's not particularly about Einstein either. So BAM has put out a small video about like exactly what Einstein on the Beach is, with a couple of excerpts from throughout the performance, just to give you kind of a taste test of what happens over 4.5 hours. So let me go ahead and pull that up. Okay, here we go.
4, 5, 6, 8, 2, 1, 3.
Einstein on the Beach is an opera like no other. There is no story, no hero or heroine, no obvious links between words, images, and music. A scene lasting 30 minutes may consist of a single image that changes at an almost glacial pace. The music may sustain a single note for minutes or explode in contagiously rhythmic combinations of voice, violin, and amplified instruments. It is an opera where dancers are the featured performers. The American premiere of Einstein on the Beach in 1976 changed forever the image of opera.
That's Philip Glass, who's playing the keyboard on the far left. Great. So that's like a small selection from a film that was put out in the 1980s about the revival of Einstein on the Beach that was done at the Next Wave Festival in '76, originally composed in '75. A large undertaking, 4.5 hours of music. So of course it took a considerable amount of time for the composer and the choreographer to kind of meet and collaborate on this wonderful piece. I've had the pleasure of getting to watch Einstein on the Beach myself. What's nice is that you're allowed to leave whenever you want. 4.5 hours. It also, the performance doesn't officially start. There's a number of traditional things that we encounter in theater when a performance is about to begin, like the stage lights dim or like the house lights dim, and everyone in the audience gets quiet. And there's usually like an official beginning. In this case, Einstein on the Beach begins with like people slowly coming out and starting their part individually. And eventually the audience realizes that there are a certain number of people that are there and contributing to some sort of musical material. And eventually everyone just kind of ends up getting quiet. So it's very cool that there's also not like a particular start to the piece as well. Gradual transformation here, lots of ostinatos, lots of repeating ideas. Let's listen and watch a more modern, but still using the same choreography as the original, more modern performance. We're gonna watch like a good section of it. Hopefully it will not be removed from my video. Same piece, different section.
If you see any of those baggy pants, it was huge, Mr. Bojangles. If you see any of those baggy pants, it was huge, Chuck the Hills. If you know it was a violin to be, answer the telephone. And if anyone asks you, please, it was trees. It is like that. Mr. Bojangles, Mr. Bojangles, Mr. Bojangles, I reach you. So, this is about the things on the table. This one could be counting up. The scarf I wear in black and white. Mr. Bojangles, if you see any of those baggy pants, Chuck the Hills, it was huge. If you know it was a violin to be, answer the telephone. And if anyone asks you, please, it was trees. It is like that. Mr. Bojangles, Mr. Bojangles, Mr. Bojangles, I reach you. the scarf of wear in black and white. This is about the things on the table. This one could be counting up. This one has been being very American. The scarf of wear in black and white. Mr. Bojangles, if you see any of those baggy pants, it was huge. Chuck the Hills. If you know it was a violin to be, answer the telephone. And if anyone asks you, please, it was trees. It is like that. So, this could be reflections for Christopher Knowles, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison. So this could be like, we. Mr. Bojangles, if you see any of those baggy pants, Chuck the Hills, it was huge. If you know it was a violin to be, answer the telephone. And if anyone asks you, please, it was trees. It is like that. This about the things on the table. This one could be counting up. This one has been being very American. So this could be like, we. If you see any of those baggy pants, Chuck the Hills, it was huge.
Awesome. What a cool excerpt. There's so much that maintains consistency, and there's also so much that changes. There's a lot of homophonic texture here, but as the text repeats, we're invited to listen to the other layers, which are slowly morphing as well. They are using what's called additive and subtractive procedure. So if you were to listen to this example again, what's happening is like the accompaniment is continuing to add like rhythmic value and subtract rhythmic value as a kind of process or design. So even that excerpt, which is over 5 minutes, it really sort of plays around with how we perceive time. And that's how the entire 4.5-hour performance goes. Einstein on the Beach ended up being fairly popular. Philip Glass has written a number of different operas and interdisciplinary projects. One of them that I want to show you engages some other mediums, including the moving image, and this particular performance utilizes a chamber ensemble with a choir and like choreographed dancers and text that's spoken and sung and recorded video as well. So there's a lot going on, and everything is much like the kaleidoscope video. Sort of things come into and out of focus and gradually change. So very kind of different minimalism than Steve Reich. However, Philip Glass has like a particular interest in working with different mediums in order to further express minimalist ideas. So let's take a listen to and a look at some excerpts of The Photographer. So this one goes through excerpts of the entire piece.
All that might have a gentleman's honor, and a long white beard, birds of big fever. And this is artificial moonlight, an artificial sky.
My name is Moybridge. I have received a message about my wife.
One of us will be shot.
One of us must die.
One of us will be shot.
What right had to talk to him? The right that every man has when he feels disgusted.
As I do. And if you don't stop it, I will make you.
No wonder even. He thought the matter finished, but it was not.
When I met him, I am sorry to say his day had passed.
Helios, ancient god of the sun, a flock of clouds to fill an empty sky, a crescent moon to turn day into night. The dream of his youth, he has made a name for himself.
Very good. So that's just like a little bit of The Photographer. Obviously, it engages as many different disciplines as, well, I guess Einstein on the Beach really doesn't engage film so much. So this is a little bit of a departure, or was rather, for Philip Glass. In my lecture notes, there's a little bit about the narrative that's happening here, but it's essentially an investigating a relationship between these three individuals, one of whom happens to be a photographer. Interesting love affair sort of situation that's happening here, but everything is very abstracted. And as we notice, there, even in one of these excerpts, there's plenty of homophonic texture, but also an interesting moment where we had different layers of text ongoing and felt significantly more polyphonic than what we have heard in our previous 3 lectures. So that's just a little bit of Philip Glass, another minimalist. We have, this is rather than a 4-part lecture, a 3-part lecture, because each section is lasting a little bit longer. So the last and final minimalist composer that we're going to talk about is Terry Riley, who ended up incorporating sort of more non-Western influences within his minimalist music. And we'll talk about his kind of entry into this genre in our 3rd and final segment. All right, I'll see you guys soon.